For a very long time, I've always been into electronics. People think I'm some kind of chronic hoarder, but the real story is that I've always been blessed to be a part of New York City and have an ample surplus of electronics as a child to play with. When I grew up as a young child, I just took everything apart. I wanted to learn how things worked. I just had this insatiable self-learning, tenacious desire to just sponge up everything I possibly could. To the point where my family actually had to keep electronics that were like they didn't care about anymore, specifically on the side so I can just completely take it apart and destroy it as a child. And because I've had this encouragement through my family, through obtaining resources, I'm watching various YouTube channels of people like building retro computers like, an IBM PS2 or a 486 or a Commodore 64, and I just think, Jesus, I found 50 of those Barbie and Hot Wheel AMD K6 computers in the trash back in the LAN party days of Quake 3. And people are like, oh my God, I finally got my hands on one of these, and it crushes my heart when I see that there are sisters and brothers by broadband out there that are just choked off by their both engineering prowess and their artistic capability because they just can't get the parts that they need. And you know what? I'm putting something together for a good friend of mine, Corrosive, and he's been choked off of supplies and parts and even lifestyle. And I know there are a lot of people out there that they want to get into electronics, but they don't feel like that they're smart enough, okay? I want you to realize that I not only see electronics as a form of engineering, I see it as a form of art. My soldering iron is a paintbrush. My palette is that of a smorgasbord of parts. I read computer code like poetry. Sometimes it rolls and it flows and it's beautiful. Sometimes it's just so poorly put together and harsh that I can't understand it or figure it out, just like poetry. So to me, and electronics and engineering isn't just math and numbers. It's a way where, this phone that I'm currently recording this video on is now an extension of myself. I can now make a recorded document of what's going on in this point of time and then to share it with the rest of the internet. I am literally taking an extension of myself and putting it out there. And that's the great thing about the internet and the era that I was born in. Now, let's just go through some of what I'm going to be giving to my good old buddy Corrosive here. So let's go through the bags, okay? So just read these guys. You'll take them out. You'll figure out what these guys are, but don't just rip through them, okay? So here's the skinny. I'm gonna give you a bunch of binder, business card, and baseball card holders. Okay, the idea on that is I create these little books. Make sure you always get the right side up, otherwise everything falls out. So I have these little binders, and what I do is I put all my components in them. And if you're working on a project, you can also put your data sheets and whatnot in there. And then let me come over here. You could put all of your printouts for your data sheets. So if you notice, this is all thin client stuff. So now I have a hard reference of thin clients. Then in the back, I can put all my RAM, Wi-Fi modules, etc. So that way, when it's time to clean the project up, I have everything I need in one quick, easy access binder. Just always mark the correct side up. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because these bags can be repurposed. All you need to do is take a 3-hole punch or a 2-hole punch, or if you get some free samples, or you get any parts in the mail that come in anti-static bags, you could just use a hole punch and just pop them into a 3-ring binder like that, and you can just get. Can you just get these big 3-inch guys back here real quick? Yeah, just get a couple of 3-inch binders like that. You can keep pretty much, a couple of fat stacks of Arduino or PCBs or development boards in there, as well as your schematics and all of the other parts and bits that you're going to need. So those are going to be an interesting surprise for you. Oh, that's going to be a very interesting surprise for you. And then when you get bored, just chew a little bit of gum. On top of that, let's go through some of the SWR meter. You know that's coming. You've got Raspberry Pi, pre-hacked Zipit Z2 with serial mod, 2 TP-Link routers, WR703N, serial modded as well. I got you a bunch of servo motors, because servos are pulse width modulated, and that's something that you're going to have to learn. Eventually, you're going to see that we have some microcontroller stuff in here, and we've also got some embedded Linux stuff in here, like the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi's GPIO can handle things like pulse width modulation. So once you start learning Arduino, or AVRs and microcontrollers, pulse width modulation, and how to control servos, you'll eventually realize that the Arduino development environment really can't handle a whole lot of servos, just simply because it's a microcontroller compared to an entire Linux single board computer. So there's enough servos in here for you to make a couple of interesting toys. I'm not going to tell you what this is. This is a surprise, but you'll find it useful for some old ham radio shenanigans. Now, let's talk about the twins, technically triplets. All right, so I got these 3 900 megahertz phones. I've had these phones, probably since like 2004. Now, the whole concept of this was I wanted to sync all 3 phones to one base. So I've modified this phone right here. I've done the videos on it. I'm going to give you one of the twins, so the two of us can actually work. You'll have the black one, I'll have the silver one, and the only difference between the red one is that it has added I/O for caller ID display, which is just like a 2-line sort of deal, but I'm putting him on the back burner, so that's going to go into the pile as well. Also got a couple of little extras for you, and some batteries. Now let's go into some microcontroller stuff. Now, you said you wanted to play with some displays, so I'm giving you one of my 4-line by 40 display. Now, this has an EL backlight, and I have an inverter inside this box of junk image. This is an Arduino shield with a couple of button inputs. I think this is 1 line 16 character. And this is my old status display. This is a 4-line 16 character, but on the back of it there is a serial backpack, so you can communicate to this HD, I believe it's oh god, I can never remember the part number, HD44780 style display. You know, that number dyslexia always gets me. But these are all standard parallel displays, and this is just the 1-line parallel screen. No add-on Arduino shield, so that way you can learn how to communicate to these parallel displays amongst itself. I've also thrown in a whole bunch of microcontroller stuff, and if you notice, this Arduino right here is a DIY self-build. And I was hoping to give you some voltage regulators, some crystals, and some decoupling capacitors, but if you notice, there's an in-circuit serial programming header. What this will allow you to do is essentially pop out this AVR microcontroller, because that's all an Arduino is an AVR microcontroller with their bootloader. Okay? Now, we have the USB to serial in-circuit serial programming, or ICSP. This will allow you to reflash the Arduino bootloader back onto various AVRs. In fact, in-circuit serial programming it's a very common and useful thing, so I'm giving you one of these. But the concept here is treat this kind of like a floppy disk. You don't have to take your entire Arduino and replace the entire board. You only need to pull the chip, put in a blank one, burn the bootloader through the ICSP, and then you can just put the chip into your own breadboardable project. There's no reason to use an entire Arduino unless it's like one of the megas and it's got like, a crazy amount of pinouts. But if an Arduino isn't enough for you, I've already included a BeagleBone, a Raspberry Pi 2. I have more screens in here as well, which you just can't see. I have a little 2425X EEPROM read writer. I'll show you a bit more about that later. We've got a universal lithium-ion battery charger. I gave you the power jack for it. You just need to provide yourself with output leads, and this should charge practically any and every LiPo battery that you'll be seeing in the pack. Now, This little guy is obviously the EL inverter for the screen. There's a 12-volt input, and then just the analog, or the AC EL output. He's not very difficult to understand. He only has 4 pins. If you fuck this up, you're some level of stupid that I cannot really comprehend. And this guy. This is a USB stick from Vonage back in the day, back when voice over IP was hot shit in a champagne glass. I've popped this open. Now it has a headphone jack on the side. And what it used to do, and I say used to because it's jailbroken now, is that you'd plug this into your computer and it would have the Vonage software because it's a C-Media 101 USB audio device as well as a think 256 meg USB mass storage, basically crammed together in one package. So I have a challenge for you. On 256 megabytes, either have a secured voice over IP application that's cross-platform, so when you plug this stick into your computer, you have encrypted secure voice comms, or if you want to go to the next level, put an entire Linux distribution on this, make it live bootable, so you can just plug this into any sort of x86 PC, and your entire environment boots up in 256 megs in a live real-time distro, enabling you with the C-Media 101 sound card, headset, and secured encrypted voice communications, or anything else you could possibly think of, because that's what we were doing with it at the time. Okay, now that this box has been regurgitated, now I have a couple of breakout carrier boards for you that are amongst the parts. You'll understand why later. This is one of them. I'm just gonna throw all this in real quick. I'm not gonna organize, just so we can get to the next phase. Also giving you as many 18650 laptop cells as I can possibly muster. Alrighty. This is the femtocell that you wanted. The jumpers are still in place. I don't know if it's committed suicide. It's likely going to need a JTAG reflash. That's something we can get into later. I've also, as seen on BSOD, or as modded on BSOD, FRS radio, as well as FRS GRMS. So I figured these two would be really great for the kid, and this one would be really great for you. In fact, I also have these Motorola Radius SP10 radios. They run, I think, in 157 and then bleed into the MURS band. Now, inside there are dip switches that tell you what channel that they, or what frequency that they're going to operate on, and they have a synthetic phase lock loop. There's really not much I can do to outband mod them, but they do bleed into the MURS band. So yeah, we could do something with these. I'm not sure what, but I have 8 of them. You also have the base chargers, and I reconditioned the antennas. But to something else that we've been doing lately is hacking these cordless phones. So I have the 5. Actually, I gave you 2 of the 5.8 Uniden handsets on top of one of the answering machine bases, as well as all of the necessary power supplies for it. Now, we're not going to go too much into the details of the Uniden phone because not much has been explored about it. So, we have our FRS radios, we have our Spirit radios, we have the Uniden radios, our Uniden phones, we have the... Wow, this is going to sound so racist. We have the Black Twin. And yes, I have modded that, so you have breakouts. You can basically just jumper these to a breakout board, and I even labeled the side just in case any kind of confusion goes on. You can just reference the datasheet for the RFIC, or just look at the side. Well, that's about it. And just some antennas. There's going to be one antenna here with an MCX, I believe it's an MCX connection for the femtocell. Pretty sure you've seen these guys on SDRs before. In fact, I could probably use this on one of my SDRs. But that's about it. But that's not everything. Cheers, beers, and bunny ears.